So after the first vlog, I realized the second one should be, what do I believe? It's a fundamental question. A lot of people might ask it, not necessarily have an answer, but I actually do have an answer. I mean, again, it's belief. However, the next question is, why am I here? Explaining that, and where is here? This is New Paltz. This is actually Mohonk, and those are the Catskills behind me. It's my spiritual home, intellectual spiritual home. It is 80 miles from New York City, and in one way of looking at it, it's the edge, or the way I look at it, it's the edge of the city energy without being in the center of that tension. You can still feel the energy from here. It's an international crowd. People come here to hike and climb mountains, and you can hear languages, you can hear ideas. It's just walking on the street. But you also have this stillness is right here. I live north of here now, but I used to live here. This is halfway between where I live now and where I used to live in the city. So it's perfect. I definitely orbit around New Paltz and this mountain and this view. So having just discovered that there's fire ants all over, I'm not going to sit on the ground right now. I'll be taking quite a bit of my favorite hike today up to Bontague Craig, which is the roof of the world as far as I'm concerned. This is where I'll be going, but I won't be taking the rock climb that is coming up. Not with this equipment. I've done it in the past many times, but not with this equipment. No way. I'll be taking the long way. So there I was, fasting for 33 days. I was on my 33rd day. I was taking the subway ride to Manhattan from Brooklyn, and I looked over at a person sitting, a couple people sitting across from me, and I said, wow, how beautiful to see me in them and to be them in me. I mean, I was, you could qualify it by saying, well, my blood sugar was low, and actually I probably was about to go into insulin shock in 5 hours from then. But that's okay. Point is, what I saw in this instant was how we are all connected to each other, and what that means, why it means that. I also saw in terms of physics. I'm a science background in many ways, as well as many other disciplines, and my explanation, my belief is centered in quantum physics. The idea of spooky action at a distance, as Einstein called it. Quantum entanglement. Some say the universe started as a Big Bang, an infinitesimally small particle that became everything. No science can explain what that means. It just isn't. I mean, What does that mean to be smaller, smallest thing possible, and then now we're everything, and we're this huge universe? The one thing I think is, well, why do we think we aren't still all that particle? We differentiate, and science does explain why the different subatomic particles became differentiated in warping of different dimensions. We live in 3 dimensions, and then fourth is time, but there are 10, they say, and a lot of those are warped inside of micro universes that we can't see. But initially, with string theory, those were all one. We're all everywhere, and then they collapsed and formed the different particles. From a different direction, it's been shown that there are subatomic particles that go in and out of our existence. So if there's one particle, let's say there's just one particle going through time, it's here, and now it's in the past, and now it's here again. Given infinite time, why isn't that particle every particle? It comes back as this particle and then comes back as another particle, disappears and becomes a particle in the past. And, why isn't that particle, whatever it is, every particle? Given enough time, infinite time, it's moving through time, so time is meaningless. So given enough of that, whatever that is, it's everything. That is a concept. Then how are we connected? Well, we are all that particle. We are all that thing. We are all that substance. If you take it as we are all part of the Big Bang, we were all in the same place at the same time, well, again, another direction you can say, yeah, we're all the same. We look different, but we're fundamentally made of the same thing. What does that mean spiritually, though? See, spirit to me is a fundamental connection that we all feel, because we are all still fundamentally connected on a scientific level. There's one theory that we are actually a black hole. We actually, on the surface, 2-dimensional creatures on a black hole. And the 3 dimensions that we see are holograms through space or not space. Space, that's becomes a meaningless subject in a way. Like if we're in a gigantic black hole light years across, which is supposedly infinitesimally dense, it's dense matter that the physics don't understand, and yet we act according to that, some of that science on a string theory level. We act just like we are inside that black hole, or that we are living on the surface of the black hole. and the stuff that becomes matter, that sort of becomes 3 dimensions, is inside. So therefore, we're at both places at once. I'll put a link to an explanation of this that's much better than what I'm saying. We're both places at once. If we're both places at once, that means we're on the edge of the universe and in the universe all at the same time. So how are we separate from what's in between? Well, we're instantaneously connecting to what we call trillions of light years. Trillions of time, of years, billions of years to get light across. And somehow we are both places at once. So that's one theory. And it just all, in that sense, like, again, at the level of that kind of physics and the level of spiritual belief, it's the same thing. Um, so back to spirit, though. Spirit, even religions as a manifestation of different angles of that. And of course, here's the best thing. Each religion can say, well, I have my true beliefs, but your religion has an aspect of what I believe. Well, so, I'm in that sense, I'm only saying the same thing that everybody else says. But why I like all religions is they do have aspects that I can focus on to express what I see. Taoism, the fundamental Tao, is the Tao that cannot be spoken. You can look at it as an energy, a flowing, constantly changing energy. Well, sounds like string theory, huh? Sounds like fundamental particles. Sounds like quantum mechanics. It's great how the religions can express each other and then take some of the core fundamental beliefs and how they express each other if you let them. But I'm not going to go there right now. There I am in the subway, and 5 hours later I visit the church that my mother raised me in, and I started to cry. I was so low in blood sugar. I was crying for probably 2 straight hours. And that was it. I couldn't move. I had to call a friend and say, hey, could you come get me? Luckily, she knew what she was doing. And she said, yeah, we need to get you something to eat. And I said, well, let me just lay down a little bit. She's like, no. You close your eyes, that's it. You're not waking up. I'm like, yeah. But the closeness to death and then an understanding of beyond the physical containment of our life, that seems like a fundamental truth in many different religions. And just even death understandings. You see the white light or the near-death experience, or people who have died and come back and see something different. So there, I guess, I've never even thought about it like this before, but yeah, that's a near-death experience that I brought back a vision of, vision. I was living for days, quantum entanglement. Again, that's my explanation for it. I mean, sure, it's my explanation for it because that's how I'm wired. I like the idea of particles that we can eventually study. One reading of the Buddha is that he is an empiricist. He's an empirical scientist. He says, don't believe me, look for it yourself. Sit, meditate, see what you see. Don't trust anything else. Don't trust anything other than what you see. He does say too, you will see many things that you don't understand, and don't try to understand them. So that goes with my first installment. Don't try to understand them. Just let them go. It's all we can do to keep clear here, to stay here and just eliminate the distractions. That's a full-time job. Nevertheless, the opening up into what else exists gives you a freedom to realize just how limited, you could say, if we live just in our bodies, that's limited. If we live as if I'm separate from you, that's limited. So each religion and each perspective has something to say about the others that are not mutually exclusive. And fundamentally, my belief is to listen to other beliefs, because there's no way one person's lifetime or even a millions of people's lifetime is enough to see all of it. But we can take everybody's perspective in how it's digested in a religion, in history, in science, in sociology, in all the studies, on all the different ways. We can take all of those perspectives and piece them together as best we can, and keep learning and growing and learning and growing.
Like the routes marked off for you, or like where to go, and there's one person who like tried to find his own route or like went off the map. Good, how are you?
Good. So I made it to the top. As usual, took the long way. It's a bunch of people climbing up the side, not just those rocks, but the actual sheer face. There's a lot of people who do, like I said, it's an international rock climbing area. So there's a lot of people who actually do the face without ropes. Just go and do it. I'm like, no, not going to do that. With my equipment, without my equipment, not going to do it. So everything I was saying before, what I saw on the subway, see, all that does though is answer how what I've seen as a child and growing up, the experiences I've had, those came first. The experiences I've had have to do with predicting, events months in advance, or friends of the family that I haven't seen for years, and I say, we're not going to see them again. That's it. We're never going to see them again. And 2 weeks later, they're dead. Like, I couldn't know that. Not at age 7 or age 10. I don't, people I've never seen or haven't seen for a long time. When I was truck driving, that was another time where I call it the flow. Like, I was in the flow really well. I drove past a point, I said, wow, this place is really good for like 100-car pileup. This is like the perfect place for it. 24 hours later, 30 cars just crunched right there. Like, it hasn't happened before right there. How could I know that? Lucky guess. Not like that. Not exactly like that, no. And when I was in seminary, it was interesting. We came from, 120 different perspectives. And we were asked the question, so what was your experience like when you felt you were connected to spirit? The answer was always the same. I mean, it wasn't exactly the same, but it's pretty much what I'm talking about. It's somehow knowing that you've stepped into a river of just knowing more than you could possibly know within your frame of existence, and finding out right away that it's right. But like I say, I explain it via quantum mechanics. But I have no problem saying that all the other spiritual paths are correct too, because that's how they experience it. That's how they explain it. At least I can understand how they're explaining what they're explaining. I understand their traditions, and I don't judge them. But I know what I've seen, and that's what matters. And what I've seen, other people I've finally found who agree, yes, that's real. And my experience is my experience, but it's not. But they've experienced the same thing. And when in science, when you draw two dots, 2 points, you can create a line. 3 points confirms the line. But if you have 100 points, you have 200 points, if you have 10,000 points, you're starting to make a pretty good line. You're starting to make some statistics that you can follow, some prediction points. But most of the time, that's the explanation. You can't live the explanation too often. I mean, you can rest on it on some level, but being here, this nature, this is living it for me. This is where the ideas fall away. This is where the explanations don't matter. And you can just be silent and connected all at the same time. And the visual takes care of itself. the feeling, the wind, the smell, it all just takes care of itself.